Dad shouted, "Pack your things and leave for good." So I did. 3 weeks later, Mom called, panicked. The house payment bounced. What happened? I simply said, "You told me I don't live there anymore." My name is Paige Turner. I'm 29 years old, and for the longest time, I believed that responsibility was a kind of love. That paying bills, saying yes, smoothing over other people's chaos was the glue that held a family together. Turns out, sometimes it's the knife that cuts you loose. I lived in my parents' guest house in Colorado Springs, a cozy little space behind the main house, cedar walls, a view of the Rockies, and a rent arrangement that felt like a blessing. I paid $1,500 a month toward their mortgage, an agreement meant to help them while letting me save for my own home. It wasn't charity, it was family cooperation, or so I told myself. My days were disciplined. Coffee at 6, laptop open by 8, and 12-hour marathons at the ad agency where I worked as a marketing specialist. I had goals, spreadsheets of savings projections, even color-coded folders for my future home listings. Then came Noah, my younger brother, the family's perpetual rough patch. He showed up one Friday night with a duffel bag, a smirk, and the stale perfume of bad bars, trailing excuses like cigarette smoke. He'd been fired again, bartending in Denver this time, and had blown through his savings, credit cards, and apparently his shame. My parents, Gary and Cheryl Turner, welcomed him like a wounded soldier. I saw something else entirely, a grown man who'd mistaken recklessness for living. At dinner, he bragged about buying an $800 leather jacket, said it like an achievement while I was counting pennies to hit my down payment goal. I told them, gently at first, that he needed to get a job, that we couldn't keep bailing him out. Mom's fork froze midair. "He's going through a rough time, Paige," she said, her voice sweet but firm. "We're all in this together." Dad nodded, silent but stern, the same look he'd worn whenever I challenged the family order. I was the responsible one, the steady earner, and that label came with invisible fine print. I was the backup plan, the fixer, the one who'd pay when Noah fell apart. The hints began to multiply. Mom's morning texts. "He just needs a little help until his next job." Dad's subtle guilt trips. "You're doing well at work. We're proud of you, sweetheart." I knew what they really meant. Give him money. Dip into the savings. Be a team player. But the thought made me nauseous. I'd worked too hard to hand over my future for his bad bets. The stress began to bleed into my job. One afternoon, while juggling client calls, I misquoted a budget. My boss noticed. "You all right, Paige?" she asked, eyes narrowing with concern. I smiled too quickly. "Just tired," I lied. But inside, I was unraveling. Every night, I sat in the guest house staring at spreadsheets, not marketing budgets, but my own. I'd type and delete the same line. How long can I keep paying for all of this? And then came the envelope. A credit card statement addressed to me, but from a bank I'd never used. I opened it absent-mindedly, until I saw the balance. $5,000, bars, online gaming, a car rental I'd never booked. The room tilted. My pulse roared in my ears. It didn't take Sherlock Holmes to know who'd done it. I stormed into the main house, paper shaking in my hand. Noah was there, microwaving leftovers, humming like the world owed him comfort. "You used my name?" I demanded. "You opened a card in my name?" He turned, eyes bored, shrugged. "It's not a big deal. I needed cash flow." "I'll handle it." "Handle it?" My voice cracked. "You committed fraud, Noah. You used my social security number." He rolled his eyes. "Relax, you've got money. Just pay it off for now." That was the moment something in me snapped. Years of being the good daughter, the steady one, burned away. "You fix this," I said, voice low and shaking. "Call the bank. Admit what you did, or I will." He muttered something about me being selfish, then stalked off. That night, I called the bank myself. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed calm. The representative confirmed the account. Opened 3 weeks ago, tied to my personal info. I explained the situation, and they flagged it as fraud. I froze my credit, filed reports, spent hours online locking down my future. I told Mom and Dad the next day, hoping, naively, they'd finally see what he was doing. We sat in the living room, tension thick as smoke. I laid out the paperwork, the fraudulent charges, the police report. Mom's lip trembled. "He didn't mean it," she whispered. Dad waved a dismissive hand. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Pay it off and move on." I felt cold all over. "He stole my identity," I said. "That's not a molehill." "Family forgives," Mom murmured. "Family takes responsibility," Dad added, glaring. The message was clear. My outrage was the problem, not his actions. That night, alone in the guest house, I realized it wasn't just money I was losing. It was respect, dignity, safety. Every month I was paying $1,500 for a mortgage that wasn't mine, carrying the weight of a family that wouldn't lift a finger for me. A week later, Dad called a family meeting. I walked in wary, exhausted. Noah sat slouched, scrolling on his phone. Mom looked pale. Dad stood by the window, voice clipped. "Your brother's debts are out of control again," he said. 10,000 this time. You'll cover it, Paige, or you're out of the guest house." The words hit like a punch. "I'm not paying for his mistakes," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mom's voice broke. "He's trying, Paige. Family sacrifices for family." I laughed, harsh, hollow. "I've been sacrificing for years. When does he start?" Dad's eyes hardened. "You've got a good job. You can afford it. Stop being difficult." That was it, the final line. "No," I said simply. He stepped closer, his face red. "Then get out. And don't come back." Silence. Even Noah looked up then, smirking faintly like he'd won something. I walked out before they could see the tears stinging my eyes. Back in the guest house, the heater hummed softly, indifferent. My whole body trembled, not from fear, but from release. Asi. They'd finally said what they'd always meant. My value was in what I provided, not who I was. That night, I called Lindsay Wade, my best friend since college. "They told me to leave," I said. She didn't hesitate. "Then leave. You can stay with me. I've got space." Her certainty steadied me. For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs. Over the next few days, I planned in silence. Packed clothes into duffel bags, boxed books under the label storage, kept the blinds closed. I booked a $400 moving van for Saturday, when they'd be gone at a wedding. Each item I packed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Lindsay texted nightly, "You've got this." She even cleared her closet to make room for me. By the end of the week, everything was ready. Saturday morning dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of quiet that feels like a pause before a storm. I stood in the guest house, suitcase by the door, heart pounding. Lindsay pulled up in her beat-up hatchback. Colin, my colleague and friend, arrived minutes later with the rental van. "Let's do this," Lindsay said, grabbing a box. We worked fast, moving through the mist. Each trip from the guest house to the van felt like shedding an old skin. I kept glancing toward the main house, half expecting Dad to appear and bark something cruel, but it stayed still, almost mercifully empty. By noon, everything I owned fit neatly in the van. A few boxes, clothes, my laptop, and one small box of keepsakes. The rest I left behind. Before leaving, I sat at the desk, the same one where I'd once balanced my budget, and wrote a letter. Mom and Dad, you told me to get out. I'm gone. I've been paying $1,500 a month for your mortgage, but I won't anymore. I'm not responsible for this family or for Noah's debts. I'm done. Paige, I left it on the table, folded neatly beside the keys. As I drove away, the guest house shrank in the rearview mirror. My chest ached, but beneath the ache was something new. Freedom. Lindsay's apartment was small but alive. Her laughter filled every corner. We ate pizza on the floor that night, the boxes still unopened. She raised her soda can in a toast. To new beginnings. I smiled, though my eyes stung. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. 3 weeks later, my phone lit up with texts from Mom. "Paige, please call. The bank's threatening to foreclose. We need you." I stared at the screen, heart steady. The house payments had stopped when I left. They'd realized, too late, that my $1,500 had been the thread holding everything together. When Mom finally called, her voice cracked. "Please, just pay the mortgage until we figure it out." I stood by Lindsay's window, the city lights of Colorado Springs flickering below. "You told me to get out," I said quietly. "I'm not responsible for your choices, or his. Your brother's trying." "I'm done cleaning up his messes," I interrupted. Then I hung up. The silence afterward felt heavier than grief. But it was clean, final. A cousin later told me the rest. Noah hadn't changed. He was still spending, still gambling, still freeloading. The debts were piling up. Mom and Dad were fighting now, Dad blaming Mom for babying him, Mom accusing Dad of driving me away. The Turner house, once the symbol of togetherness, had become a battlefield. Meanwhile, I was rising. At work, I poured every ounce of frustration into my ad campaign. Late nights, relentless revisions, perfection stitched into every slide. When the client presentation finally ended, my boss called me into her office. "You're our new senior strategist," she said. "You earned it." The promotion came with a raise, enough to rebuild the savings I'd once sacrificed for them. I walked out smiling, my reflection in the glass walls looking stronger, older, freer. Lindsay and I celebrated with takeout that night. She clinked her chopsticks against mine. "You did it. You're thriving." And I was. I'd learned something brutal but true. Boundaries aren't betrayal, they're survival. My family's love had always been conditional, measured in dollar signs and guilt. But love shouldn't cost your peace or your future. Mom still tried reaching out. Emails, letters left unread. But I didn't respond. Some wounds don't need conversation, they just need closure. Now, when I walk into my apartment, I don't hear shouting or guilt trips, just quiet. The sound of a life that's mine. The walls aren't fancy, but they're free of debt, of expectations, of manipulation. Sometimes I think about the house I helped pay for, the one that might soon belong to the bank. I don't feel revenge. I feel release. They made their choices. I made mine. To anyone listening, maybe you've been where I was, carrying everyone else's load, thinking love meant saying yes. It doesn't. Love without respect is a leash. And the moment you let go, yes, it hurts, but it also heals. So when my mother's last message came, "We might lose the house," I just whispered to myself, "Then maybe you'll finally understand what it cost me to keep it." I'm Paige Turner, and this was the story of how I stopped being the family's safety net and started being myself.